Good morning, everyone, for this nice, intimate session on cross-version extensions. At least I hope you all came for this highly specialized and esoteric subject. If not, I don't mind you walking away. This is something you either love or hate. Cross-version extensions, I mean, this is the second time I'm here this week in this huge room talking about something very esoteric, although one of those was FHIR schema, which is looking to the future. And this is cross-version extensions, which will allow you to use any old version of FHIR for the next decade. So it's in some ways, it is really old technology. But the thing is, cross-version extensions are probably the first thing I want to do a presentation about that until a week ago I did not understand at all. And when I dug deeper, it turned out that none of us really understands cross-version extensions completely. So this was quite a journey. So just to make sure that I'm staying on track and I'm not telling things that are actually wrong, I did bring in someone who knows more about this than me, but I'll introduce him later. I've introduced him before this week, by the way, as a hint. Okay, who am I? My name is Ewout Kramer, and I work at FHIR, where I am the head nerd CTO. But most importantly for this talk, I think I am a software developer at heart for the .NET SDK that some of you might be using. And I spent a considerable part of my life writing parts of the FHIR specification. Most notably, I think, structure definition. That's my pride. Anyway, both of these two things mean that I feel responsible for making cross-version extensions work at some point in time. And on the other hand, I'm a SDK developer, so I actually have to make them work in code on the .NET stack at some time, and I can tell you that's truly scary. So what are those? Before I go anywhere deeper into cross-version extensions, what are cross-version extensions? Who of you have heard about cross-version extensions before? It's quite a bit. Who of you actually used cross-version extensions? That's impressive since, you know, they're numbered, but they haven't been published yet. So that's the interesting thing about cross-version extensions. So if you're using them, I wonder how. But what are cross-version extensions? Well, cross-version extensions, I already, hinted at that, allow you to include an element from another version of FHIR into your version of FHIR. So you're using R4, and you see something really cool in R5, and instead of you having to say, crap, I need to switch to R5, or I have to wait until my country switches to R5, you can actually use that R5 element in your R4 instances. So it's not a way to use two versions of FHIR at the same time. It won't allow you to return, to have a search that returns a bundle with like R4 and R5 stuff in it. No, you're firmly in a version of FHIR, but you're using elements from another version of FHIR. And the most two important use cases is that lots of countries, and I have to still take a look at that board over there with the pins, but I saw like a mountain at R6. A lot of countries are probably waiting for R6 to move anywhere. So they're on version 4, most probably, or in case of the Netherlands, sometimes STU3. And they determined to stick with that for years. But at some point, there are going to be features from the new versions that you want to use. I think one of the things that I hear most, for example, are your subscription stuff, Gino, right? That's cool, but that's in R4B or R5. And so to be able to use that, you have to use these extensions in R4. Another use case is where, so this is like you're in history and you want to look forward, but another use case is where you actually newer, so you can go backwards too. You're on an R5 server, or at least you have data that you expose, for example, as R5, but you also have an R4 endpoint. And on that R4 endpoint, you can produce R4 data that includes stuff that you have, about R5 data that you have in your data. And there's a way to express that R5 data into R4. So it can go both ways. So all in all, I think this is a pretty cool feature. It helps you stay on R4 forever, okay? So you never need to upgrade in that sense. But this is a real use case, right? It's a real use case. Now, the fact that these are extensions, these are done as extensions, means that we'll see even more extensions. I mean, when we invented the whole notion of extensions, we made them ugly enough in the hope that people wouldn't use them that much. And now we're introducing something that actually, will make sure that there will be way more extensions used in R4, I guess. So let's take a look at the simplest example that I could find. It gets ugly pretty quickly, so it was hard to find a simple example, but this is one. So imagine we are in R4. And I found organization.description very useful in R5. So what you do, as I said, this is an extension. So what we're having here, and where's my Red Bull? Yeah, I will need to point a lot at stuff, and it's not over there, but it's on the sides. So this is an organization resource, and I want to use the R5 description, the new R5 description element in this R4 organization. So everything, most of it looks like normal. Resource type, organization, name, Firely. And as you can see, there's an extension here with a URL, and this specific URL contains the version number of the future version of FHIR. So here we can see that this is actually a new thing in 5.0. It appeared for the first time in 5.0. So that's why this is an extension coming in, well, not from 5.0, but it has 5.0 in its canonical. And the other thing is that they will always be looking like this. You have a FHIR version here, then it says structure definition, then extension dash something, and then a full path. And that is the path to that new cool thing in R5, and in this case, that's organization.description. And the value was provided to us by ChatGPT. Thank you. A wonderful organization that produces tools, and that's true. So this appeared in R5 for the first time. Now say we're looking a few more years ahead, I'm still stuck in R4, and there's a new cool R6 thing. You can imagine what happens. This is organization.rating, a star rating, thank you. And as you can see, this points to 6.0. Now, just to get you warmed up on the kind of discussions that we're having is it really easy on the user to figure out, if you look, presumably in R6, we'll have organization.description too. Is this very user-friendly than to say, go find out as a user what the first version of FHIR was where this stuff was introduced. So you have to put 5.0 here and 6.0 there. So kind of asking the user to do a diff, find out where this nice element was mentioned the first time, and then have this thing over here instead of 6.0. You could also say, why not have a 5.0 extension and a 6.0 extension for organization.description? Sorry? And we're discussing that. As I say, this is a kind of a warm-up thing. It's going to be way more complex, but this is a warm-up thing, yes. One thing, of course, is that this gives an explosion in the number of extensions we have to generate. I think we're already at about 7,000, so this won't make it any easier. So how to find the fact that you might never have heard about these cross-version extensions is because it is actually quite well hidden in the FHIR specification. And let's see if I can actually pull up a browser. It's always harder if you are in presenter mode. Let me see if that works. If it doesn't, whoop. Because the fact that it's so hard to find means that I feel kind of a responsibility to show it to you where you could find it. No signal. Okay, it's no problem. Please. Maybe I'm impatient, or maybe I should just stick to the presentation. All right. Now I might have messed it up for the rest of my presentation. Oh, no, thank you. At least we can continue. There we go. Can I still get my little pointer? Pretty, please? I lost my mouse pointer now. Oh, laser pointer. One more time. Hey, that works. I remember we did a DevDays prize award once, and someone presented the slides here like this, and on the small slides you could see who had already won. That was an interesting one, right? Okay, I won't try that anymore. Let's see if I can get my laser pointer back, and then we're all happy. So, basically, if you go to the main documentation page in FHIR, there will be a page on managing different versions of FHIR, and then you get to here. And this little paragraph in the FHIR spec is actually completely unreadable. This is the kind of text in the FHIR specification that you can read once you understand what it's about, but not before that time. So I hope I can shed a little bit of light on it. But the most important thing is that of this part is that it's actually normative. We did this in R4 and it's normative, and I was there when we did this, and I still remember that we were writing this and like, there are quite a few number of edge cases that we haven't thought about, but we'll just maybe fix it at some point in time, or let's just ignore it. And the fact that we made this normative was not the smartest thing to do. So none of this really works, even though R4 was done in 2019. So you already get a sense of what's going on. On that page is this matrix, and it's interesting to take a look at it for a sec, because you'll see that on the left-hand side, there's like, if you are in R4, and you want to use things from R5, you go to you go all the way to the right-hand side there, and you have HL7 R4 extensions R5. If you're in R4 and you want to use things from R2, you have to get another link. So you get tons of packages generated for you that contain these extensions for your version of FHIR. And the fun thing is, none of these links work, right? In fact, below it is the following text. Note for bellators, because this is normative, right? These packages will be created when R4 is finalized. Until then, these are broken links. This was 2019, right? Googling won't help you either. If you Google cross-version extensions, you'll find an NPM file that's empty, or an IG with just the changes, or some magical JSON file that I can't understand. So you're all on your own. So what's going on? Well, we keep on discovering new corner cases as we're trying to publish this stuff. And as we're finding corner cases, we don't agree on how to fix those. So every single FHIR meeting, somewhere at a workgroup meeting, we're like, okay, let's sit down and finally get this done. And as soon as Graham or Gino here gets down to business, he'll find more corner cases. And so it's back online. We find out that online we don't know how to fix it. We'll have to wait to the next workgroup meeting and so on. You're going. And it's normative. So that means that now we discover that some of the things we wrote in 2019 weren't that smart. We can't break it anymore. We have to stick with what we found. It's massive. Like there are like 7,000 extensions by now, so it's not easy to produce. And yes, it's very hard. And I hope at the end of this presentation, you'll agree with me that this was hard. This is very hard. And furthermore, there's only 2 persons in the world that actually understand this matter. One of them is here, so I made sure he was here. It's Gino again. You know, help you out on the opening of DevDays, help you out with cross-version, whatever you have to do, Gino is here. Initially, it was just Graham doing this. And most of the time, Graham says, okay, I'll do this. And then, 2 months later, you look and say, oh, yeah, I did it. But even Graham got stuck on this stuff. So I'm really happy that Gino joined in. And the last workgroup meeting in Dallas, we had like lists of questions on how to progress. Also, it doesn't help, and this is no way blame, but Graham finally took a holiday. So, European style, a real sabbatical. And Gino has picked up that task, so thank you, Gino, for that. So let me show you a few of those corner cases to give you a sense of what's complex about these extensions. So here we have, what do we have? immunization. And in immunization, we have administered product. And this is in R4. This is a thing from R5, sorry, and we are in R4. And the problem is that codable reference, the data type used here, didn't exist in R4. So it's nice that I have an extension, an R4 extension with value X, but that X could never have been codable reference. This was a corner case we knew about when we published in our R4 normative timeline, and we were like, yeah, we'll fix it. Or maybe we just won't allow it. But that didn't work, so we had to find a solution for it, and it's over here. The solution is a complex extension. So that's fairly straightforward. We see immunization that administered project, nothing new here, and then an extension that is a complex extension with two fields, and those are simply one-on-one the elements from the complex data type. So there's no way to see currently, or there's no way to see that this is a codable reference, but at least the data is here. All right, corner case 2. This happens too. We have an existing element in R4, codable concept here. It is communication. This is, practitioner.communication is a codable concept. And in R5, we discovered that you want to express not only the language that this practitioner speaks, but also whether that's the preferred one. We have that on patient, didn't have it on practitioner. So it makes sense, but it means that this single element splits up in a backbone of two elements. The simple solution, you'd say, and it is also, I think, the current solution is, okay, we'll use a complex extension again. But there's something new about this. One, for the first time, this is not a new element. We're using the existing communication element, so practitioner.communication. It's still on communication, and the extension is called practitioner.communication. There is a subtlety here that we could also have said, well, don't use communication, but put the extension, like all the other extensions we did, in this case, on the parent. So practitioner.communication is an extension on practitioner. Why isn't this extension? All the previous extensions were, so this is a new extension, one step up at the parent. This extension is actually on the element itself. And I don't know if we have a hard logic for that, but this felt probably more natural. I want to extend communication with this new feature. So that's one thing to watch out for here. And the second thing is, only preferred is actually the new thing. And this is an important concept. What we wanted to do, and I think this got clearer and clearer as our knowledge about cross-version extensions deepened, is that we want to make extensions only for the things that are truly new. So one thing you should not do in R5 is use, for example, in R5, an extension, the R5 cross-version extension, to express the same thing. And as we progressed in our thinking, we made that stricter and stricter. We really want to force the users to express things that can be expressed in R4, and only the new things using these extensions. So in this case, only preferred is the new thing. So why not create an extension that's called practitioner.communication.preferred, and do just a Boolean over there. And I don't think, I think that's a running discussion, right? We were discussing this last week. We were like, yeah, actually, that's a good thing. And this is because initially when we made these things, we were like, okay, let's just produce all the extensions we can. And we're like, oh, well, only if they're necessary, and so on. And this deepened and deepened. And so this is probably something that is on your list to discuss with Graham when he's back from sabbatical. The third corner case, now it gets scarier. This is the one we never hoped would happen, but of course it does. We have, let's say, parameters.parameter.value x. So in any version of FHIR, the x can be any data type, but that means that in a new version of FHIR, it's all the new data types too. So in R5, or between R4 and R5, it might have been B, I don't know, we added integer 64, codable reference, and so on. And codable reference, extended contact deal, and integer 64 didn't exist in R4. And an existing meta was added that wasn't allowed before. Because in R4 we thought, Meta is a data type that you should never have here as a parameter, so we simply didn't include it. So how to start out, how do I do value meta? This one is scary. Look, it is a complex extension. Look what happens here. So we were talking about, one more time, we were talking about parameters.parameter.value. And if you look closely to the JSON, you'll see that parameter.name is there, but parameter.value is not. So in this case, we have completely replaced parameter.parameter.value because value, the X in value couldn't contain meta. So we can't use the original R4 parameter.value thing. And so we leave it out completely. We put an extension in its place, and it's called parameters.parameter.value. Bracket open, X bracket close in this ugly notation. It's not human-friendly, but at least it's consistent. We could have done value too. This is one of the things where we are, why didn't we do value? Oh gosh, it's normative. Okay, well, whatever. And then it's a complex extension with n elements. The first one is underscore data type. We need that to express the choice. So that has meta here, so you can see that this is a value with a data type of meta, and then all the elements of meta, of that complex data type meta, are included here at the spot in this, this extension. I don't know whether I like that particularly, but that's what we've done. So your last updated here is from meta, the existing data type, and you could have all meta's elements inside here. Solved. Okay, another corner case down. But remember, we completely replaced the original value X here. All right, this is for the viewers at home who watch my slides. Now, a new corner case, value integer 64. It wasn't even there. So how to express an integer 64 if we didn't have an integer 64? The backbones won't help you this time, right? There's just no way to express an integer 64. So what happens here, you can see underscore data type, integer 64, and then there's an URL called value with the value of string. So really? Yes, really. We just put the integer 64 in here as a string. Now there is a table in that nasty little paragraph, right, that I tried to show you, and it lists for all versions of FHIR which replacement data type to use if the data type didn't exist in your version, and the table is completely off. So, or at least some things are in italics, we think it means something bracket open and closed, there's mistakes in it, so don't look at it too much. I think integer 64 is really the most interesting one here, and that's expressed as a string. So big question mark here. I'm walking on thin ice because I think even that value thing we made up last week. So careful. Corner case 4. There are cases, as I said, like in parameter to parameter, where we leave out the original element, but what if that element was mandatory? If an extension replaces an existing thing, we need something with the previous. So I had to, this is luckily way more seldom, so we had to look deeply into, in this case, task. So task.input.value is mandatory, but we can't use task.input.value because one of the choices didn't exist. And we replace it with an extension. So what we do, and I think this is one of the most ugly things we've invented, is, okay, just put it there. So put value there anyway, because it's mandatory. Choose any primitive type of your choice, value Boolean, and then put a data absent reason on it. So, okay, so we've dealt with the mandatory part. Value code unsupported, that's the thing you should use, so we can recognize it. And then we can add the extension that replaces task.input.valueX. No, I'm not happy about that. I remember discussing this in September workgroup meeting, and this was the most, I think this was the best solution we could find. It works, and luckily I don't think it happens a lot, but it's there. So I'm wondering, everyone who put up his hand, I didn't register who it was. Oh, no, Linda did, so I know about that, and says, we're using cross-version extensions. How on earth are you using these? Are you using these as all or just the simple things? Yes. The simple things, right? So for a long while, I personally thought, let's just produce extensions for the simple things. And then if someone needs these weird corner cases, we could actually manually write an extension for you if you wanted to. Or we can, we can find something maybe at that point in time if it's actually getting used. But I applaud Gino and Graham for wanting to create something in advance that covers all these cases. But I think it would have been possible to sit down maybe at a FHIR article and say, okay, people need this now, let's do this. But this is what we have. Corner case 5. A coded property with a changed binding. Now here it becomes important again to realize that what we really want is for you to express what you could already do in R4, unless there's something really new. And so with value sets, generally there are codes that were already there in R4, but there's a few ones that got added. Or maybe a code got replaced. Or maybe a code got split up. Any kind of these things. So this is an interesting one, a coded property with a changed binding. So uncoded status has new codes and others were obsoleted and some were split up. Now, this is something that I'd like to see, again, what I'd love to let you see in the browser, but luckily I got a few slides here. If you go to your resource of choice on the FHIR website, so you go to Encounter, and then you click on the diff tab, the diff R4 tab, then you'll see which elements have changed, and at the bottom there is a C R4 to R5 conversion maps. And these conversion maps are written in the FHIR mapping language, and there's concept maps in it, but at least it's quite readable, and what you'll find there is a mapping between the codes, between R4 and R5. Why do you need to know that? Because we want you to express the old things that were possible already still in R4, and the new things in R5. So you have to basically read this to see that plant did not change. So if you want to express plant in a code property, use the R4 plant, use the original element. If you want to express finished, though, you see that that has a split, and you have to read these backwards as well. The target is R4 here. So the R4 finished is actually discharged and completed in R5. And so for this one, what do you do? Now, I sat down with Gino, and this is more or less we think that the guidance is at the moment. So if the code is present in R4 and R5, and it means the same. So if a code was renamed, but it means the same, you still use the old code, right? You should not use an extension. And this is interesting because now, as I already said, how is a user going to find out whether something's changed? And I think the end answer will be, well, if the extension allows you to express it in that new thing, then it was new. And if the extension doesn't allow you to express it, you can't find the extension, the code you want is not there, then probably someone, either a tool or a human being, determined that no, this already existed in R4 and you have to use the R4 thing. This puts an enormous burden at this moment, again, on the tooling, which has to figure out what is new. It's a humongous diff tool. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, use the R4 code. If it's split, use both if you have the details, obviously. And if it's a total new concept, yeah, use the extension. So if it was finished in R4 and you have more details now that it was actually discharged in R5, and I think by now discharged moved somewhere else, do this. So you have status finished and then an extension on status with the extra encounter.status. Now, which value set are you talking about? Now I'm switching here from my modeler head to the developer head. What if I'm writing a validator, which I am, and I want to validate that? Which value set are we talking about? Which value set is backing this extension element, right? Is that an R5 value set? Which would mean, and this was the situation in September last year, that I am in R4 with my R4 validator. I have an extension from R5, and I actually have to switch to the R5 NPM and get the value set from there, and that was truly scary. Because you're in R4, how come my running ecosystem, my server has R5 in scope? So this changed. I think the current tooling wants to copy those codes that you're allowed to use, and there we go, back into R4. And so create an R4 value set for this extension that contains the codes that are actually new in R5. But some of the value sets are not explicit value sets. They contain reference to other, they compose from other value sets. So what if they refer to something? And the original current spec says they will then be resolved in R4. So you have an R5 value set copied over to you, but all the references in that value set are actually R4 references. No, that won't happen. Gino promised me that we'll just provide you with the extensions. This is going to be interesting if this stuff is not expandable, so don't go there for now. I have no idea. But the important thing again is that the variant value set I will copy into the extension contains just the codes from R5 that had no equivalent in R4, with all buts and caveats and all asides. Promises, yeah. So cardinality 6 is an easier one. You can relax a little bit. Cardinality change, that happens too. R4, an element had a cardinality of 0 to 1 or 1 to 1, and in R5, it is now a repeating element. How on earth? Yes. So the first element goes into the property, the existing one in R4, and we'll have an extension. So that looks like this. Encounter.class is something that did that. And so the first repeat goes into the existing coding, which was already there, and then there's a repeating extension for all the other codes that you want in there. And the blue balloon here highlights one fact, and it is, this is again, this is an extension on the original non-repeating element. And it feels a bit weird because in this case, it's on codable concept. So I'm extending codable concept to make it possible to repeat the class element here. But that's what we have so far. These are more or less the corner cases I want to discuss with you. The reason I did that is to make you aware that cross-version extensions aren't exactly production ready at the moment. I hope I made that point sufficiently clear. Now I want to point out to the enormous task that Graham and Gino have taken upon them, and which is to have the responsibility to only produce extensions and value sets and all that stuff for things that are new and different. So what does it mean, new and different? So a simple rename, if your element got renamed, you won't get a new extension for that in the new version because a rename doesn't express anything new. So it's not about something being new, but something expressing an element that has an unrepresentable change between two versions. Data type change, I wrote in the same domain, no, but I was like, okay, so we go from like string to markdown in a newer version. That markdown actually expresses something more, but you are still able to express the old text in the new one, I guess. So I see Gino saying, no, we're not generating probably an extension for that. Moving an element deeper in the resource, so encounter.dietary preference, move down into encounter.hospitalization.dietary preference, or it might. If it expresses the same thing, no, but most of the time this happens because hospitalization repeats, and so you have multiple of these, and then of course we'll need to produce an extension. The fourth one, if in R4, oh yeah, this is like this pattern that changed. In R4 we had a lot of codable concepts plus references sitting there as sibling elements, and then we decided in R4b that we probably should have introduced a new data type for it, codable reference. And so you won't get an extension for these new kind of elements because you're already able to express this stuff in R4. And furthermore, I think if we just renamed the names of things in value sets, but they're the same codes, you won't get a new extension for that either. So this means that at this very moment, this has turned into a very big tooling thing. A tool that finds out whether there is any difference at all, and then generates, it. But that requires that we first formalize the rules on what the difference is. Writing this super diff that implements these rules, it will require human intervention because to determine whether two codes mean the same thing, and there's all kinds of edge cases, so we need a tool to find out whether this something is actually new. And the state of last week is found here. So None of these, I think there's quite a few experimental URLs here. FHIR.org/diff is a kind of a hidden link that allows you to compare all kinds of versions of FHIR against each other and find out Graham's view of what a difference is, which differs from Gino's view. The wheel align, there's HL7/FHIR cross version. What's on there again, Gino?
The HL7 FHIR cross version is the set of concept maps, structure maps, FHIR markup language, etc. that's pulled from a bunch of different sources to make the diff.
Ah, right, that's the inputs to all the diffs, right? Those are neat concept maps, structure definitions, value sets, anything we have, FHIR mapping language things to map between the versions, any input we have.
Yes, but they weren't all used in
No, they're not, oh yeah, that's right. So there's a discrepancy between what's in there and what's in FHIR.org/diff. Then there is a markdown document written by Gino with all the opened questions. I showed you 6 corner cases, but I'll guarantee you, if I pull Gino here on stage, he'll have a 6A, 6B, 5B. There's so many more corner cases to go. And finally, and that's an important one, we'll be discussing this, and that's there on chat.phir.org. So if you're interested in these kind of discussions, and I guess after this presentation, you're all very much like energized to take part in these kind of discussions, you can go up there. So when can I use it? Really, really soon, we think, we hope, right? In the kind of, this will be published before R4. Oh, let us and that's basically, at this moment, all I can say. So I think there must be tons of questions, but I have 1 minute more, so I have one more slide I wanted to I always got confused when I was looking at, this has an overlap with extension packs that we're also publishing. So one of the things that you sometimes wanted to use from a new version of FHIR in your older version of FHIR was a cool new real extension. So we're not talking about a new data element, but someone published a new extension in R5 that you really love to use in R4. And there really isn't a reason why we wouldn't allow that. The only reason this was the case was that we published the extensions with the publication of FHIR. So about a year or a year and a half ago, don't remember exactly, HL7 took the decision to take out these extensions from the FHIR publication and make a separate extension publication that is versioned differently and so on and so on. So it means you can, we just have a bunch of extensions and you can use them in all versions. It has, I always confuse this a little bit with cross-version extension because it has an overlap here. It allows you to use new things from your older version. But it also has the same problems. There might be a new cool R5 extension that uses a data type that didn't exist in R4. And I'm figuring that the reason that, extension packs are published at the moment, but I am dying to see how these problems are fixed in these extension packs while we haven't even finished the discussion about cross-version extensions. So also treat those with care. So know that there is an overlap between the two, when proceed with care, that's basically all I want to say. Questions?
Let's see. Hey, oh, it's working. Yes, thank you, Ewout. First, thank you for summary, because I don't think I could have condensed it this well. And second, thank you for buying me time. People will not be asking how frequently it's done now, because they can see. I do want to note, a lot of this is kind of the peek behind the curtain for the work, and if anyone's interested in helping, please do. But the end goal is there will just be a package like any other package, and you can just use them. They're just extensions. So as we move forward, when these things are done, there's just going to be those packages that have the broken links will just exist, and whatever's in them you can use. So that'll make things a lot simpler.
Yeah, I want to confirm that in the end,
yes.
for the end user producing instances, okay, we might have a weird syntax now and then, but there's nothing new going on. And for me as a developer of the validator, the fact that all this stuff is actually produced as an R4, normal R4 extensions with R4 value sets means that I don't have to build any weird new things into the validator.
Exactly.
So all this complexity is kind of behind the scenes.
Yes. And then the other note is for the people who are using it today, that normative description pattern, that's one of the fun things, Graham implemented in IG Publisher and has also been implemented in Sushi, slightly differently between the two. And so that's one of the things we're reconciling is right now you can publish IGs. I know as I publish an IG that uses cross-version extensions. And you can do fun specific things with some of the conformance resources like actors and subscription topics and things like that. If anyone's using any of those, it's using cross-version extensions underneath. If you look, the nice IG rendering shows you the nice like R5 style version. But if you go look at the resource, it's basic with a whole bunch of extensions. That's these cross-version extensions. And so depending on who is responsible for generating those in the tooling, they're slightly different right now, and that's another fun thing we're reconciling. But we can use them. We know that this is the case. We will make sure that things work, but it does make it take a little longer to define.
I mean, we're sticking to our roles, right? During the opening, I am the realistic guy, and here is the optimistic one. Yeah, we have a question in the back there.
Yeah, thank you. I love the Int64 because especially strings may make to 1 megabyte, so will be fun.
Yes.
Could you go back to corner case 2, please? Because just to understand the concept correctly, does it mean that I can pick any attribute from any resource that I would like to have? No, next slide, please.
This one? Okay.
Yeah, or any. With these extension URLs and the chained, the dot chaining in the URL, can I pick any attribute from any resource? Basically, or in theory?
No.
So that's a little bit the thing. When we published this in R4, it basically said exactly what you're saying here. You see something cool? Just look at the path, put it over there, and it will work. And now we discover it won't. And in fact, we don't want you to do that because we want to determine which things have changed enough so you get your extension. So in principle, what you're saying is true, but you might discover that there is no extension, a real existing extension in these, and I'm saying these, by the time it gets published. Like here, you'll see links to all the NPM packages with extensions, and you might not be able to find the extension with that path because the tools have determined that it didn't change, or so it won't be there. Yep. Question.
I don't need to stand up. Is it all right if I join you, Ewout?
Of course.
So my question has to do with what do I gain by using these cross-version extensions? Does it facilitate when the time comes that I do want to transition from R4 to R6 over me just creating my own extensions in my own IG that are defined, you know, I look at R6 and I say, oh yeah, I want to use that, and I define it in my IG, but I use a local one. Does it help? Is there something there?
So if I got the question correct, is like I could simply create my own extension right now for something that is there in R5. And I think, yes, you could do that. I think, though, that in the end, this, here we're just provided for you, so you don't have to create it, you don't have to write about it. And of course, it increases the chance that someone already in their app built support for this specific, they understand it, they put it on screen, they allow the user to edit that, and that will never happen if you, more or less define that extension yourself. So it does have added value if you use the extension as published by HL7 in the end.
Yeah, and I can say, as someone who's been through exactly that process with the subscription backports, one of the interesting things we're running into is now we are continuing to make changes to subscriptions in R6. So now I'm in the fun part of saying, okay, well, I have an R4 backport IG that defines these extensions, because cross-version extensions were not usable at all at the time. And now I have to add new things, not just from R5, but R6. So now I have to go back and publish a new version of my IG and start adding elements from R6 and reconciling the definitions I created in the IG with what's different in R6, and it's very painful. So the cross-version extensions will help a lot with that kind of thing. just to quickly jump back to the last question, because I remembered something I was going to mention and had forgotten. One of the interesting things about how we're trying to define the extensions is resolving the contexts to make sure things like, when you go from DS2 to practitioner, then you can access things in that context that are practitioner or practitioner role, because that resource got split. When a new resource is added, those extensions are allowed in the context of the basic resource. You can't just stick a subscription topic extension onto a subscription resource because that context doesn't make sense and people wouldn't know how to find it. So we are doing a lot of work to resolve all of those things, which is another fun set of challenges. So hopefully I got both of those questions.
All right. We are at time, I think. Or not? Okay, one more question? Okay.
Last question.
You always have to call out the last question, right?
And we're here all week.
You got
so.
it. All week. One. Right.
Is there any concern that this will slow down adoption of, future versions? Like, if I can stay on R4, I just will forever?
I can formulate it. Would we keep people from staying on R4 and creating their own extensions by not doing it? I don't know. So I personally, I think, no, we're just facilitating things that people will do in some way and want to do in some way anyway, but your opinion might differ.
Yeah, I think, as we were just asking in the last question, right now, people are solving it by writing an IG and defining extensions anyway. So the actual difference in adoption rate of things like that, I'm not too concerned about. The big thing that addresses to me is for people who have been doing software for any period of time, we know that we have R4, for instance, and something like the US government will hopefully at some point switch the regulations to point to R6. That doesn't happen overnight. There's windows of periods of time where we have to support both. And that's where this kind of thing really comes into play, is saying, if I have a regulatory requirement in 6 months to support R6, my systems need to start doing R6. But the current regulation is still R4. And so how am I going to interoperate data and things like that, across these sets of systems? And that's kind of one of my big pushes for trying to make sure we get this figured out and sorted now, is so that we can have it before we get R6 published. So.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you, Ewout.
I hear the applause in another room, so people will be coming in. Thank you
Yes.
for helping me out.
Oh.
And I hope to learn a little bit today. Thanks.